Hello everybody, I am Ron Baker. Welcome to video number 5, the final video of this series that I've put out called A Wake-Up Call for the World. I am so excited to be at video 5, not because there aren't 50 other videos that I would love to put out in order to continue this education with you, but because this is the video where I'm going to bring together everything that we've been talking about and talk about how it applies to you and me directly. It is so much simpler than you might think. We are in a time of global pandemic, global interruption, global challenge. Notice that I am now calling this challenge, not global crisis. In video number 1, we talked about how crisis is defined as an event for which I feel unprepared to respond. In these videos, I've been giving you a lot of ways to respond, a lot of ways to connect to self, a lot of ways to begin to nurture self, to value self, a lot of ways that you might reach out and connect to other people. Those are all priceless clues and perspectives for the solution here. In order to put that together, hopefully as simple as possible, my own challenge, I want to return to the model of self that I was talking about from the beginning. Please, if you have not listened to the other videos, go back and listen. And before I get caught up in the excitement of the information I'm sharing in this one, please help me reach other people with these perspectives. Please send these videos to anyone that you think needs a deeper, nurturing education, a deeper sense of comfort as we go through this crazy time together. I can't reach as many people without you. It's another example of how we are interdependent. This is a major clue for the subject of today. Video number 5 is being called A Wake-Up Call for Flow and Balance. Flow and balance. And I'm about to help you understand it much more fully than most of us have taken the time to consider when we're in our busy hamster wheels, working really hard to make money and climb the ladder of success, or to work really hard in order to fulfill a lot of agendas. There are also lots of healthy choices we've been making. So we started this whole thing out with, we need an education about self. And we need to evaluate our lives at various points. And what better time than during a global interrupt for every single person to be left with more time to focus on self, to evaluate what was working well and what was not working well in our lives, and how we can use these tools as the starting place of a new foundation to create a new vision for who we want to be on the other side of this global challenge. So we return to the model that there are 3 facets of self: child, adult, soul. I hope that you're clear by now from the other videos that just because you're in a child's body does not mean that you got everything you needed to create balance and flow in those early years, leaving you with a sense of innocence and wonder and trust. It does not mean just because you've moved into an adult body that you've learned how to create the flow and the balance to become a truly empowered, informed adult who is in charge of embracing challenges to constantly grow and enhance and improve your life. And it certainly doesn't imply that we've moved out into the most fulfilling parts of self, which are included in the soul realm of self. All three of these potentials were inside you from the time you were born. But you know, just as you could not access what life might be like as an adult when you were just 6 years old, you were having the lessons that were perfect for you at 6 years old. But you discovered that there was adult potential held inside you, however much of that you've claimed so far. Well, the same thing is true for soul. Most people, including me for decades of my life, had no idea how to access the realms of the soul, or what that might equal, what the experience or the potentials would be. Well, I've now spent 29 years deepening and evolving that journey of self and journey of teaching other people through my School of Self-Mastery in New York City. Self-mastery, claiming more and more of self. And for 29 years, I've been doing the nurturing work, educating myself about me, understanding more of life and how to create flow and balance in each part of me, which has allowed me to move out into certain realms of the soul. I can't wait to see where another 29 years is going to lead me, because we all have so much potential. But most of us have never been educated about self. How many people said to you when you were a child, "You are a sacred child of God, and you have a soul, and you have so much potential held inside you as a unique individual, that you can grow into more and more and more and more of yourself for as far as you choose to go for the rest of your life"? No one ever said anything like that to me. I heard some religious perspectives about the soul. They were intriguing, but no one taught me a practical way of connecting to self, learning to hold self sacred. This soul realm is the realm of sacredness, and trust me, that is a very real practical thing. It comes out of learning to value myself, trust my value as an individual, and when I do, I then begin to connect to other individuals, and I learn how to create a flow and a balance with other individuals, and I discover more and more and more the sacredness of each person. I had no idea how to understand, much less experience, what I just said to you for the first 30 years of my life. I had no idea. I wanted it. I was searching for something meaningful, but there was a missing education. And so now I'm going to jump into more of the education, tying together as many pieces as I can from these 5 videos. I may be talking a little faster in this video than I have in the others. It's only because I have a lot that I want to cover. So, what creates flow and balance? Well, first of all, what is my finger representing? A flow and a balance of what? Energy. Energy. Every single thing in life, including you and me, is made up of energy. The aliveness that we experience comes from a flow of energy. And when there is a clear, unimpeded flow of energy, we literally expand into more and more of self, moving from child to adult to soul in potential. There's one move of energy that will make this more clear than anything else that I could say. When we reach a certain stage of childhood, energy begins to awaken in our bodies, moving much more powerfully than ever before, starting at the base of the spine and moving up through our bodies. It is called Kundalini energy, but if you don't know the fancy word, this is the sexual creative force that moves through our bodies. And when it begins to accelerate, it is attempting to cause our entire systems to expand to the next level of potential. We move into a whole different accelerated physical growth, emotional growth, awakening more of our consciousness, mental capacity. Everything moves to a next level. Well, guess what? That is not the only time that Kundalini moves, attempting to bring us into the next level of potential. When we've had time to create flow and balance in our adult lives, we build up to a certain level and then our souls recognize it is time for us to awaken, and that energy begins to build again. In the time that we have known as midlife. Now think about it. If it was actually midlife, we would have a second half of life to now get to know the highest levels of our potential. But this interesting word called midlife has some wacky negative connotations, because when the energies begin to build at midlife and want to expand us, but we have spent so much time in child and adult years not creating flow and balance that we have literally built up all kinds of fear, shame, and judgment. We have built up defenses. We have built up walls of protection. We have built up so many blockages that this energy that expands and wants to bring us to a new level of fulfillment literally slams into all the blockages in these first two arenas of our lives, and we create accelerated breakdown, disease, and death. Now, if you understand and trust the soul realm, the soul doesn't know death. The soul doesn't experience death. The soul is an eternal part of ourselves, no matter what system of spirituality you may embrace. I happen to embrace the fact that there is so much to learn. How could we possibly learn it in one lifetime? The soul has eternity. Why would we want one lifetime and then an eternity of reward and punishment? There's a reason. I hope to make that clearer in the next few minutes. But if the soul is eternal, why can we not have as many lifetimes as we need at a foundational level? And then we move to the next levels and the next levels, just like we spend time in first grade. And if we learn the curriculum and we pass the tests, then we're ready to move on to second grade. And if we truly aren't ready, we go back and continue in first grade. We, as a planet and a society, have shamed that process. How dare anyone have a learning curve that is not the ultimate learning curve? We have held each other in so much fear, shame, and judgment about the process of growth, and there are reasons. Let's go to the soul. The soul knows what you and I need as our next perfect steps. No matter what lifetimes have come before, no matter what you embrace about eternity and multi-leveled growth in lifetimes, that was a little fancy, but you get the point. No matter what you embrace, our soul knows what you and I need, and it sets up those particular opportunities and challenges in our childhoods. And then it gives us adulthood to go into those issues and to resolve those issues and to learn those issues. Let's just say you had a particular challenge physically. I'll give you an example from someone I went to college with. I went to school with Mike Singletary. You might know him if you're into football because he was a superstar in football. What you may not know is his childhood started out with a major challenge physically. As he described it when I was in school, he was a runt. He was a weakling. He did not know how to thrive physically. And so he took his challenge and he worked on it and worked on it and worked on it into adulthood and turned it into one of his greatest gifts. Others, even myself or Mike Singletary, sorry Mike for using you as an example, had other challenges that we either decided to face or not face. If we don't face them, then we get stuck in the wounds of a child and we don't have the flow and balance that creates trust and innocence that prepares us to move into life and always sustain a childlike level of innocence and wonder. And we bring that and we add to it, and then the soul sacredness. Well, if we have no education about self, hardly at all, and we don't even know what left us in fear, shame, and judgment, which are dense energies that block the flow of energy, then it's hard to grow into the biggest levels of fulfillment. No problem, no shame, no judgment. That's the level of life that I was ready for at certain lifetimes, until I was ready for the next level in certain lifetimes. Do we need to go to our elementary schools and start shaming the 1st through 3rd graders because they're not yet 4th through 6th graders? That seems absurd to us, and yet on some level we've all done this. So what I'm suggesting is that we begin to look at life from the perspective of the soul, and that we apply the wisdom that an adult would not go and shame a 1st grader for being a 1st grader, hopefully. We need to start treating each other as souls at different levels of learning. And I could go into this for hours, trust me. But I'm going to jump now to a next really important subject. What creates actual flow and balance? If I want to now go to my child and adult selves and create flow and balance, particularly inspired in a time of challenge like this global interrupt. What creates flow and balance? Movement of energy. What creates movement of energy? For that, let's look back at what I taught you in video number 2. Proactive breathing. Breathing in to the belly, filling that up in the nose, and an out breath through the mouth. How much energy do you think I just moved? Excuse me. Rather than just talk about it from breath, there are 2 parts of the breath: receiving and asserting. We call it giving and receiving, but let's, for now, call it the receptive energy and the assertive energy. If we look in traditional science, that would be a negative sign and a plus sign. In math, we have addition and subtraction, addition and subtraction. So receptive energy and assertive energy. Where we have those 2 things, energy naturally is received and then asserted. And this is what creates flow and balance. Now, how does that apply to you and me? Any single system of the world operates through these 2 energies, a receptive and an assertive energy. We take in and then we are meant to give back or assert. If we go all the way down to the tiniest parts of self, let's go to the atom. An atom is made up of a proton and an electron. And in the middle is some really, really important stuff. The proton is the assertive energy. The electron is the receptive energy. When there is flow and balance, the atom operates in complete health. And guess what? That's an eternal flow of energy. An eternal flow of energy. Energy is going on all the time. Just imagine the millions of years that this planet has existed. An eternal flow of energy has sustained the planet for however long you embrace that it has been here. So the atom in each one of us, the atoms, there are trillions and trillions, need to flow, and then the cells, there are trillions of those, are made up of atoms. The cells then join together and form the tissues of our bodies, which then form the systems of our bodies. Every single one of those things, whether you like biology or not, every single one of those things operates through a flow and balance. That creates health. The health of cells, the health of tissues, the health of systems, and the health of your whole body. And then the health of the whole planet. If we're in a flow, it all operates wonderfully. Let's just look at a couple of the systems and how the systems are interdependent. If we go to the heart, what do you think creates the beating of a heart? What do you think this equals? There's a flow of blood and it is asserted out through the veins, through the arteries. Been a long time since I've studied biology. It is asserted out through the arteries of the body, and it goes to every cell, delivering all the nutrients and oxygen that you need, delivering to the body. This assertive energy comes from this movement of the heart. It squeezes the blood out. Well, what do you think the other movement of the heart does? It receives all of that blood back into the heart to be fed, purified, oxygenated, and to release what we no longer need in the blood. This flow of giving and receiving creates health. Now let's look at a second system. The lungs breathe in from outside us oxygen and other things, energy. We breathe in oxygen and energy. The lungs take that and then they assert that oxygen into the bloodstream, which feeds the heart, which feeds the body. The lungs then breathe out the carbon dioxide that we no longer need in the body. Well, now let's look at the interdependence of our two systems with the planet. If we did not breathe out carbon dioxide, guess what would not thrive on the planet? The trees, the flowers. Guess what? They breathe in. The trees breathe in our carbon dioxide, and then they do their beautiful process and breathe back out oxygen. Where do you think it comes from? We are so interdependent on flow and balance, and believe me, this is going somewhere relevant to the coronavirus. We are so dependent on life to operate in flow and balance. So the trees breathe out. Well, what feeds the trees? Now we go to the sun. The sun sends out energy, not only to the trees, but to all of us. The sun bathes us in various levels of light and energy, which equal nutrients. Just go to the doctor with a deficiency of vitamin D, and what do they tell you? Go get some sunshine. It is life-threatening to not have a balance of the vitamins and nutrients you need, and the sun provides that directly to you. So, we have interdependence of lots of systems. Oh my God, would I like to go on and on and on with all of this? It may seem like I am, but believe it or not, I am keeping it short. So, within all of that, if we have flow and balance, then we have health. Almost. What is missing? What is the component that we haven't talked about? I'm going to make an atom really huge. This is not the same as child, adult, and soul, but I have to use my hands. Imagine an atom that has an electron and a proton, and that creates a flow of energy. Well, what is the energy moving through in the middle of the atom? What is all this seemingly empty space? That is where we hold the energy of our consciousness and our experience. This is huge. In the middle of the atom and the cells and the tissues and the whole body, we have the neutral energy. The neutral energy is our experiential consciousness. When we are bringing all that we need into the body and we are creating a flow of receiving through breathing, receiving in many other ways, and asserting, what do you think I got you to do the breathing for? What do you think I got you to do the exercise with the cloth? This is creating an assertive energy that is more than just air, more than just oxygen. It's an experiential energy, and we have this gift of sound that can move energy. And you're going to be amazed, I hope, at how much more flow and balance you can create using breath and sound. So now we return to our experience is what fills the center, our consciousness, who I am, why I can perceive is because my consciousness fills, my soul consciousness fills my body down to an atomic level. My individuality is in every cell of my being. So what allows me to move into more and more evolved parts of my consciousness, more and more fulfilling levels of my experience? Whatever I feed into the cells that allow, or the atoms and the cells, that allow me to continue to awaken and grow. This is how we evolve and how we create profound new levels of healing and fulfillment. It's all very scientific and spiritual. It's the same thing working together. So, if as a child I received what? Love. Yes, but that is one of the most misunderstood words on the planet. Why? Because it has so little education. How many people have ever taught you what love is? I don't mean showed you certain loving actions. Can you define what love is? I've gone through so many years of evolving myself into more and more understanding of these very things. So I'm going to start out with love is made up of certain levels of experience. 9 levels of nurturing is what I teach in my process to all my clients around the world. 9 levels of experience that awaken facets of love. And I'm going to define love as a sacred intimacy of acceptance with all facets of self, all facets of life. A sacred intimacy and acceptance. Intimacy requires a connection. What allows connection? Giving and receiving, asserting and receiving. Connection. Love is neutrality. Love is the flow, the eternal flow of balance. And if, as a child, your soul set up certain challenges, which it did for every single person I've ever met so far, ever worked with so far, and instead of these 9 levels of nurturing, which I would love to teach you about further down the line if you're interested, when we don't get those, we go into fear, shame, and judgment. Those block energy. If I go into fear and I say no, if I go into defense and separation and I say no, I stop the flow of energy. If I go into fear and grip, such as what people are doing during this time of the coronavirus, we stop breathing. That stops a flow of energy. The same systems that are counting on the oxygen and the energy, the same systems that are counting on the love and the nurturing, become diseased. They become weak. They become distorted. Oh my gosh, I would love again to go on and on about this. That's as far as I'm going to go with that, because I have another realm that I need to talk about. I've already set this up in a prior video. When we end up in fear, shame, and judgment, we create fearful agendas and control instead of inspiring commitments that move into a flow and build our visions of life with other people, valuing the whole time. So we get stuck over here in fearful agendas, and when we do this, we're not creating a fulfillment. We're not feeding the body what we need. Instead, we're stuck in just building our fearful agendas. So as an example, if I don't trust that I'm going to receive everything that I need, which is ultimately love and nurturing, I replace it with stuff, with money, with attention, with validation, whatever, with gratification, with numbing out. I replace all this beautiful flow with hits of gratification, and it can never be enough. Why do you think drug addicts take a little bit to numb out, and then it's not enough? They need more and more and more and more, destroying themselves along the way. If I'm stuck over here, I am literally not feeding myself down to an atomic level. I'm not loving and valuing and nurturing myself. And so I get caught up in my agendas. Now let's look at what some of these agendas are, and I'm going to tie this right into the coronavirus. We talked about before, if I want more money and more money and more money, then I'm going to figure out ways to control, not in ways that value the good of the whole. And so if I am someone, and I'm not picking on any particular industries, we could go to any industry and find these distortions. So if I'm going to want more money faster, and I'm someone who is growing cattle, and I'm going to feed those animals hormones to make them grow faster, because then I can get through the cycle faster. If I'm working with crops and I genetically modify those crops and I create faster crops, or I figure out how people will be dependent on me and I create crops that don't become a cyclical seed-producing crop, they only go so far. You get the point. All these control mechanisms that are nothing more than wounded individuals stuck in their particular agendas. But what does that do? It distorts the DNA. It feeds hormones into the meat. If you happen to be a meat eater, then you're going to be ingesting that meat with the hormones into your body. What do you think you're feeding your cells and your atoms? What do you think goes into the cells that want a flow of health, that want a healthy flow, a natural flow that aligns with our DNA, that flows through our DNA? When you introduce toxins into the cells, it distorts the DNA. What do you think a virus is? It is something that gets spit out of the DNA that is a distortion created from a toxin. This is how we get sick. In addition to the experience, if we're not having experiences of nurturing and value, and instead we're having experiences of fear, shame, and judgment, we are accumulating that energy into our cells. If we don't know how to express our feelings, what do you think happens with all that emotional energy? It gets trapped in the body and stored in our cells and our atoms. And instead of a clean, neutral energy, it becomes charged with the toxins, even emotional toxins, which is nothing more than emotional energy stuck in fear, shame, and judgment. Wow, this is like, you need to go back and listen to this video many, many times to get these layers, because there are things we can do. Now, how do we tie this into the coronavirus? Well, I've already told you how a system called our DNA spits out a virus and becomes weakened and sick and moves into the midlife crisis of I can't handle this, and it begins to decline. So now we look at the last century. If we look at just the last century, every time a new energy called electricity, which is a flow from a positive and a negative pole, each time electromagnetic energy has been introduced on a global scale on the planet, our bodies have had to learn how to assimilate that new energy. When it has been introduced, let's go back all the way to 1917. By the way, I heard this particular body of information from a doctor from Cornell. So I love that the medical industry, certain individuals are starting to embrace the impact of energy. So according to this doctor, in 1917, when we had radio waves introduced on the planet around that time, within 6 months of that time, a viral pandemic occurred in our bodies. We had the Spanish flu, and 1 million people died. 1 million people. Why? Because the systems were not being fed and nurtured and strong and in flow. They had whatever levels of weakening. And this new energy created another anomaly to be assimilated by our nervous systems, and a viral pandemic occurred. This happened in 1917, then we introduced radar on the planet in World War II, and we had another viral pandemic. And then we introduced in the 1960s, satellites up into what is called the Van Allen belt. This Van Allen belt now had all these energies, electromagnetic energies, pouring into the planet, and we had to assimilate, and it began to create again. Then we move into the last 30 years, and we've had more and more electromagnetic energies introduced. We moved from 2G, 3G, 4G. These are terms of second generation, third generation, fourth generation Wi-Fi energies. And we have seen an acceleration of flus on the planet over the last 30 years, where we have accelerated more in 30 years technologically than we did in thousands of years. But when we've introduced these gradual steps of more energy and people's bodies have been asked to assimilate more and more, it's exhausting to the bodies. Physical, mental, emotional bodies. When we've introduced these, they have challenged us. Well, we now have a new energy being introduced called 5G. Just as we wanted cattle faster and faster, and we gave them hormones, and we wanted crops faster and faster, so we gave them hormones, chemicals, pesticides, so many things so that we could make more money faster. Now we have our technologies and we want faster. This is because we don't trust the flow of nature. We don't trust the interdependence of love and nurturing. And out of that, we have become prepared to go, yes, give me faster. Well, this 5G energy is made up of a very different kind of electromagnetic energy. It is a short wave form rather than all the G's before, which have been long wave forms. This short wave form is more like a laser beam. So where do you think one of the first systems to assimilate as a test city 5G? Wuhan. Wuhan was a test city, and they put up 10,000 plus antennae around the city, beaming all of this new energy. Well, we need to learn how to introduce these things in healthy ways, because if it breaks down the system and the body is that much more weakened, it has allowed the anomaly of a virus to emerge, and it moved through very quickly. So now we look and see, where is the next city that the acceleration has happened in such a big way? There are several places in the world. I'm just going to choose one example. New York City. I happen to live in upstate New York. New York City is another test city for 5G. And they have also become a test city starting in September of last year, and have decided to put up 11,000 antennae across the city. So this is a very big topic. And we want technology to move forward. We want things to go forward. I'm not trying to make any system, whether it's the meat industry or the crop industry or the technology industry, wrong. I'm not trying to make them wrong. I'm trying to point out what every single one of us has been doing, caught up in our agendas. We have not been in flow. But if we begin to nurture self, to introduce 9 levels of nurturing, and we create flow and balance, because it is never too late to learn how to move into the next steps of our evolution, moving toward the soul energy, which operates from meaning, value, and purpose. We can create an interdependence that is unlike anything we have known on the planet. We can learn how to grow technologically, but to do it in a way that balances and values one another. Not caught up in the me, no, mine, which people are finding themselves doing. Toilet paper has become one of the hugest jokes, but it's not really a joke. It is a fear of the child. I won't have enough. My needs can't be met. We need to wake up and realize how interdependent we are on one another. We'll either keep each other scared to death, or we will keep each other inspired to the next levels of what is possible. Love and nurturing, value, these are the lessons, and we have challenges that we need to face along the way that allow us to claim more capacity of self, to grow and deepen. Please go back and listen. Please share with all the people around you. If you don't assert and share, and other people don't have the opportunity to receive this education and the tools, you see the problem. Let's become a part of the solution. Let's move over here and become a part of an unprecedented wake-up call. Wake-up call. That is where the planet is moving, and it cannot move in spite of us. It can only move with us, or we become a part of the distortions. We either move through this midlife in grace, flow, and ease, or we go through a continued cycle that has been all too familiar through friction, resistance of fear, shame, and judgment. Oh, I want to share so many more things. I have spent the last 29 years teaching people all over the world how to become empowered adults, how to reclaim the wonder, innocence, and trust of a child, and how to move into the initiations of soul. I wish you well in this time of challenge. I wish so much to hear from you how you are taking the seeds of this and moving to your next perfect steps, committing to the flow and balance of love in your life. That is the opportunity. Thank you for being here. I honor you. I value you. I am grateful for this time. And I look forward to sharing more of the journey. Blessings.